You have to be a teacher. You're a professor of the business to create mini-mes of you. And so you recruit mini-mes. Doesn't matter if they're female, male, any gender, any sex, any nationality. If you're going to create a team, you're going to have an eclectic mix of people's personalities and education levels and, different drives and income needs. But if they don't share the same passion and the ecosystem and the DNA structure of what you are and what you're delivering to your clients, you can't make a rinse and repeatable system. And I look at the military, like we call ourselves the special ops of real estate. We're the operative team. It's because we have systems, we create good training and onboarding, and the result is we have to win. And that's how every military should be operating. And a real estate team should be modeled the same. That's what I learned.
You're listening to the #1 real estate podcast in the world, where we speak with real estate agents about wins, losses, what's working, what's not. Today I'm joined with my co-host Cody May from Sheridan Street.
You stole my thunder today because I couldn't get it out of my mouth. Like, I couldn't get the intro out. I think what we have to do is we have to start recording the intro prior to and just like running.
I think so.
I think that's the new plan going into 2024.
But it feels good at our last podcast of the year.
Yeah.
I've heard it so many times. I didn't hit it. I didn't hit it perfectly, but I've never practiced it. So.
You did it pretty decently. What's up, man? What's happening? This is the last podcast that we're recording with a guest of the year.
Yeah, it's great.
Your feet are up.
Chilling, bro. You know what? I realized after the 200th episode, we're not getting paid. Like, I can just be comfortable. Like, I could just be comfortable. Like, why should I even put pants on? I keep wondering like these questions. And there's nobody to give me an answer except for myself. And
these are valid questions you ask yourself every day.
I still have like a sciatica issue from like 4 months. So.
Did you get that checked when we get back to Colombia?
I've had it checked out. That's the crazy. I've been to like two chiropractors in three chiropractors in 3 countries, and they've done all sorts of things. And
you're falling apart. You're 42. That's why.
It's like 42 in 2 weeks. It's crazy.
I know. We were walking. I was walking on the beach this morning with Andrea, and we were talking about that. Like, she was like, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like, I'm like, just like, let's go for dinner. I'm like, Vikram's birthday is coming even before that. She's like, "Oh, you're getting old. You're turning 33 this year." And I'm like,
be careful with what you say next.
I'm like, I don't know.
I have a knife collection.
I am. So
I have a knife collection, and I'm okay testing it out. Like,
it's okay.
I will publicly threaten you. Okay.
Old someday. We all get old someday.
All right. Enough. Yes. So my birthday is on New Year's Day. It's coming up, and we're going to be Cocobongo. The ladies wanted to go to Cocobongo for a show and some dancing and drinks, and I'm all in. So we'll have some fun. But, before we get into our guests, because I have a feeling our topic will kind of correspond to what he does. We just did an amazing pop-up class. If you guys actually want that pop-up class, just message us on Instagram. I'm Coach Vikram Diol. Cody's at COD, COD May. All we ask is a little bit of social love for these podcasts.
A little love.
Yeah, and if you have a business that you'd like to get in front of realtors, we could talk about taking your money and getting you some publicity, because we've had 215 episodes in the last year.
I think we're around there.
Uploads and downloads uploads have slowed down, but downloads have taken off. And I was training a lot. And you know what I love is when our private clients actually show up to our free trainings.
It's so
because
funny.
they're like sometimes your free trainings, because you don't like. Sometimes when you're doing your course, you miss some of the basic things that they missed as well. And so they come back for it. And we had like 20 people on, and 50% of them were like our own private clients, which is cool. But we were talking about the importance of tracking, right? And I think we'll probably jump into that. And then we were talking about the importance of not leaving a lead as a lead, but humanizing it and like trying to and then trying to create the appointment with it. And I have a framework that I've been using for like 10 years. Sharon I probably learned it from Sharon and then tweaked it over time, and you utilize it. Sharon still teaches it inside of the Real Academy. If you can find a way to disarm your prospects, create more conversations, get curious about why they raised their hand, stop asking the questions about like, are you pre-approved? Dan, if you ask those questions, I apologize. But like, if that's the first question out of the agent's mouth, right? Like, I can't imagine your guys' business is so solid. I can't imagine that. But if that's like the first question out of your agent's mouth, or you're an agent and that's one of the first questions you were taught, like, I get why you're trying to get motivation, but that's the wrong way in this post-COVID consumer world to get motivation. There's so many better ways to get motivation than asking if they have a pre-approval. What we talked about after we interviewed Tamir almost a year ago now was it's our responsibility as like me and you to help the consumer, because there's things that we know, there's people we have influence with and relationships with. It's our job to help educate the consumer. And one of the ways we do that is you get curious about your prospect. And when you get curious about them, they open up and they tell you everything, and you never even have to tell them, but it's our job, educate the consumer about the process. It's not their job to know the process and then come to us ready to buy.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And we recently ran a study that we reviewed 100 random calls in our call center across client accounts. We removed some of the teams, like Dan,
teams.
Some of the top teams, like very similar teams to like Dan who is our guest today. We removed them from the mix and just reviewed 100 random calls. And guess what we found, Vikram? How many people actually ask for the appointment?
I can't imagine that it's a good number.
8%.
Yeah.
Of people actually ask for the appointment out of 100 random surveyed calls. So that's the whole reason we do these podcasts is to get you in front of people that are winning in their market. What are they doing? What are they saying? Like, the whole concept of this podcast is to get you the right information so that you can win. Learn from wins, learn from losses, learn from lessons, learn from stories from agents that are really winning across the country. So I'm so excited to introduce you today, Mr. Dan Gandee of Real Broker, the Operative Group. Excited to have you today. Why don't you give us the 60-second Cliff Notes version on who the heck you are? I feel
like you should be playing like a guitar.
I think you should. Maybe grab the ukulele for me.
One of the instruments, and you should do it with, because I mean, you got the guitars in the background. So.
Yeah, it works. Maybe a song or two.
I'm okay with the song. Welcome, man.
What's up, man?
Welcome.
What's up, boys? How are you guys doing?
Living the dream.
Good.
Just trying to stay away from my probation officer.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Being the last episode of the year, I just want to pack it in the short amount of time, as much value as I can to give back to the agent community. But the Cliff Notes version is grew up in Ohio, not too far from Cody, right? He was right across the border. Yeah. Grew up in Ohio, 25 years there, graduated with a bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing. Had no effing clue what I wanted to do, but be around luxury homes. I was a construction estimator while I was in college. So I moved out to the Silicon Valley and linked up with a pretty famous landscape architect who built most of Pebble Beach Country Club.
Oh, wow.
And then that turned into building a really profitable construction company, design build. We had celebrity clients, sports stars, CEOs of big tech companies. But I was always in people's houses, like houses. And finally, a lot of my clients were real estate agents giving us referrals, and that construction company ended up selling. And I was like, I have no clue what I want to do. So to fast forward, took a ops and marketing kind of higher level position at a really, really successful team that was just starting out. Now he's the number 4 real estate broker in the state of California. So we built that from the initial 4 agents. I think he has over like 120 agents now.
Nice. Crazy.
Yeah. So we did that, marketing systems, lead generation, getting everything dialed in from a data standpoint, the systems, the operations, events, past client follow-up. And then I just took a massive curve into real estate tech. So I worked for an IDX website company for 5 years, coaching agents on social media marketing, listing marketing, SEO, Google PPC, Facebook ads, and did that for 5 years. And finally, Norm over at Liftoff Agent was like, hey man, maybe you should get your license and we can like test this IDX stuff out yourself. And I was like, oh, cool, let's get my license. And it went from like 0 to 80K in GCI, working like 4 hours a week as an agent. And then from like 80K to over 300 in GCI now with a team of 20, and ended up parting ways with Norman. Everything's been good that direction. And we built this team to be just an elite force of highly specialized agents that are extremely trained to offer a unique client experience that is everything that I hated in the past. The reason why I didn't want to be a real estate agent, right? Sloppy agents when I was an investor, or still am a real estate investor, just bad communication, just not following up, just everything. I like literally when I started the team, I put a list together of everything I hated about real estate agents. And I said, how do we create a training program and create a team that is very specifically trained to each niche in real estate, whether it's investing, probate, downsizing, divorce. And then also on top of that, how do we cross-train them to be extremely next level? And that's probably because of the experience working for a very successful real estate broker, is that like if you're going to operate in a $1 million to $3 million market, and we come to Oregon where it's a $300,000 to $600,000 market, like if you operate at that level, you're going to get way more reviews, and your ability to go from 0 to 100 transactions plus in 3 years, it's like that's what we did. So that is the Cliff Notes version.
You first, bro.
Okay. I have to look at Cody because I think that there's a lot. So I flipped houses, right? And my first agent was part of the investment company that we were working with. I wasn't licensed at the time, and we flipped houses, and we were in the Puget Sound. So I was just a smidgen away from you compared to where we're at now in the world. And our first agent, I think the house sold for $600,000 in, I can't remember the name, but big deck, view of the water. And it sold for like $500,000-$600,000. And I saw his check, and it was like 3%. And then the other agent was 3%, totally fine with it. But then I sat down with my business partner, and I'm like, bro, this a-hole never called us. I just happened to be in the area because we had to do a little bit more like repairs. I happened to be in the area, and I drive up to the house. I pull up in my fire truck Dodge, and I get out of the truck, and there's people there, and I'm like, hey guys, can I help you? And they're like, yeah, we're just waiting for our agent to show up. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Well, if there's anything I can help answer questions of, let me know. Who's your agent? Because I don't want to let random people into the house and get shot. Like, I'm very sketchy of people. I said, who's your agent? And they said, oh, it's Darren. And I'm like, I mean, the guy whose name is supposed to be on the sign, but there's no sign here? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, what time was your appointment at? They're like, about 3:15. It's 3:45.
Oh my.
And I was like, oh, you know what? He actually called me and sent me out here because he said he had something go on. They're like, yeah, we've been trying to get a hold of him. I was like, yeah, he said. And then I texted him, I'm like, where the F are you at? I'm at the house. Like, I'm letting them in. What the frick? And he calls me back. He's like, hey, bro, I'm sorry. I'm like, are you drunk? Like, what the hell, dude? It's 4:30. These people could buy the house. Like, I'm bleeding $6,000 a month in hard money loans. Like, what are you doing, dude? And when I got licensed, I did the same thing. I was like, all right, bad communication, scared to have conversations, don't show up. And I just did the same thing. I didn't write it out like you did, but I just mentally did whatever they didn't do. And people talk about service in this industry. And I'm like, you can't say you have the best service because there's a lot of great companies out there, big teams, 4 or 5 admin, but you can give an experience by just doing basic communication like you guys. And obviously your numbers speak for themselves, 100 transactions in less than 3 years per year. So that speaks for itself. I think I'd like to know because you guys have an agent count of almost 20, which is extraordinary, like kudos. I think I'd like to know when you onboard an agent, is there like a qualification list? Obviously hiring is where it starts, but you bring them on, it's like, all right, here's how we are going to communicate. Here's how we're not going to communicate. Is that part of like your onboarding training, or how do you guys do that so that everybody is uniformly speaking the language of the operative group?
Yeah, we break it down into two spheres. Like we teach the buyer process from like 0 day one to like you can write offers and close deals. And then we turn around and once they understand and fully mastered 100% of the buyer process, we start over and we do the listing process. And to answer your question, in the first few trainings, like it's all about what we expect, our expectations. We have it in our team agreement that we send over. It's kind of like, here's our code of ethics. Here's our mission statement. Also like, here's how we deliver. You live and die by your calendar. You communicate with everybody. You set up roadblocks in your calendar for emails and communication. So like the beginning of the day, midday, before you go to sleep, you're kicking back emails, you're getting escrows opened. Everything is like a very systematic approach. And that's why me and my business partner kind of jammed down, because he's actually in the aviation, he's an aviation engineer.
Wow.
So everything is so SOP by the FAA, right? It's like, hey, you want to fix something, you have to go through these many steps. And I'm more of the driver and the person who's really trying to lead, inspire, and get our agents to a level where I can start to remove myself from production. And I was talking to Cody when he jumped on our podcast, is like, the one problem that we're having is that the market shifted, right? And I'm having to continue to stay in production because I have the name recognition. So we're really trying to work on that problem now, because we have a good pool of agents. We've got rid of the agents that weren't producing or weren't following the plan. But now we're trying to shift that into hyper-focused productivity so that I can get out of like that 50 to 75% of all production to get that down to 50% or less. So that's our next challenge.
We can talk about
let's jam.
I actually did that on my team. So.
Yeah, but I want to hear. So I have a team right now that I'm working with, and he's having this exact same problem right now where he has about a team of 7. This happens like pretty much across the board.
Yeah.
And a lot of this has to do with tracking. A lot of people, like you coming from the IDX world, you coming from just the tracking world, and we chatted about this today.
Right. A
lot of this starts with tracking, but that I would love for you to kind of share what you're doing from a tracking perspective in order to coach people to performance. But like, what is your ethos from a business perspective of having agents that aren't willing to perform? Because this agent, for this team lead, for example, has a database of 10, 12, 15,000 leads that are sitting in his database right now. We're sending over transfers. His agents are taking the transfers, but his agents, like every single agent on his team, is not using the scripts. They're not asking for the meeting. So how do you take somebody, and this is a little bit selfish because I'm going to send this podcast to him. Of course. How do you take somebody that isn't performing, or for example, everyone on the team, maybe there's one outlier who's like willing to put in the work, that is, willing to actually, because you say, hey, I'm doing 50% of the transaction volume. He's in the similar boat at a smaller transaction volume. He's not doing as many transactions as you're doing. Very similar, where he's doing the majority of the transactions. A couple of great people that are performing. And I want to hear you, because I know you did this as well. Like, how do you coach a team to performance without bashing your head against the wall?
Yeah, it's.
I think that's still part of the program.
Yeah, it's part of the program. I mean, like I always listen to like what Sunit and like McLean are saying, and Cheplack and all those dudes. And I think there's a lot of good golden nuggets to take from other team leaders. But what I really focus on is the seller intake process and the buyer intake process. And it's exactly what you're saying, Cody. Like if somebody calls me and they're a buyer, or if I'm sitting in a bar and they're a buyer, what is the correct questions to be asking, the scripts to be working through? And at the end of that call, how do I put that into a CRM, set a reminder, and make sure that I have an appointment? And so we focus on buyer and seller intake process. It's pretty much buyer and seller script, but it's just like Zillow, ALM mode. It's going to be like appointment, location, motivation, feasibility, what the next steps are, what you can expect in this process, a little bit about us. Let's hear your story. It's everything, right? We've worked that buyer and seller intake process, and I literally tell them to print it out, and I just like test them. And then 90 days in, 180 days in, I'll call them and be like, hey, let's go through the seller intake process. And if they just completely fumble it, like I just send it right back to them. I said, hey, an agent, this isn't hard, right? If you're selling cars or you're selling a house or you're selling anything, a pacemaker, if you know the right questions to ask on the initial call, you know what to follow up on the second call, and you take good notes, you disposition well, you're able to follow up and convert down the pipeline way easier. So to answer your question, like by the time they're 6 months in, If they don't know that buyer or seller intake process, they can't run a pricing matrix, which is basically a CMA on steroids. They can't run an APOD, which is an annual property operating data on investment property. Like, there is no room for error. Like, it's then on probationary period and they're out the door. So I take 0 to 6 months very serious. And by 6 months, if they haven't, like, we keep in terms of tracking, let me get into this for a second. We're probably going to be shifting over to using more of electronic tracking system. We use Google Sheets right now for calls made, emails collected, appointment set, appointment met, nurtures, DNCs. And every time they jump into Vulcan 7 or anytime they jump into doing any type of lead follow-up, even in the CRM, like, we want to know on a weekly basis for a part-time agent versus a full-time agent, how many dials are being made, how many conversations are having, how many emails are collected, and did you hit that key performance metric? For a part-time agent, we like to have at least 2 appointments a week. For a full-time agent, we want that number to typically be 4 or 5 an appointment a day.
Bro, that most agents, if part-time, right? Like, your part-time metric of 2 appointments. Cody and I were bantering about this yesterday, and that 2 a week, that should get them to 20 transactions a year, right? Like we have a stat. Like, we built a tracker with the help of Matt McKenzie. He gave the framework, and I just kind of tweaked it a little bit. If you could book 2 appointments with a modest conversion rate, but here's a challenge: like, how many of your part-timers are hitting 2?
We're getting 1 consistently.
That's great.
And we break it down by hours committed. So, like, when I first sit down,
I love you, brother. I'll send you my trackers when we're done.
Yeah,
I'll send you my trackers.
But for a part-time agent, right, where we look at what they're currently doing for work and what their time commitment is, and then we time block in when they're going to commit, what they're going to commit in terms of real estate. And for a full-time agent, like, if you're not working like 200 hours a week when you're trying to start your real estate business, you don't know what the hell you're doing.
What do you consider? Like, I'm curious because I didn't do well with part-timers just because, like, we had so much training that they wouldn't be able to get to if they were part-time, that it just didn't make sense to do it for us personally. If I had a more of a manager doing the sales training, then I would have accepted part-timers. Let's talk about the full-timers though. Like, what would you say a full-time agent prospecting hours should be on average per week?
I would say a minimum 180 minutes a day.
Oh God. Wait, why are you doing this to me? 3 hours a day? 3 hours a day?
180
yeah.
minutes.
And I think that, 180 minutes is basically 2 90-minute sprints. 180 minutes? Because it's 2 90-minute sprints.
Got it.
Yeah. And because what I found out is from 0 to 90 minutes, you can go hard. And then you take a break. And then we broke it down like 0 to 90 minutes in the morning, 0 to 90 minutes in the evening. But I allow them, it doesn't have to be 0 to 90 minutes of just prospecting. If you want to jump on Instagram and DM people, or if you want to go to coffee and meet with somebody,
outreach.
Yeah, it's just got to be 180 minutes a day of you talking to people who haven't bought and sold for you or have bought and sold from you in the past.
Right.
And that's how we break it down. I really look at the metrics of ISA department and how much outbound they can do in terms of dials and connections and conversations versus a real estate agent, and looking at, like, so if Frankie can do, dial 240 numbers in his 4-hour shift, and you can't even dial 240 numbers in 5 days, there's a problem and we're going to address it. And so, I want to build this business that is not just prospecting based, but it's also omni marketing based. And I think that's the biggest thing, because I'll be honest, guys, like, when I first started, like, I did the cold calling, I called the investors, I got the deals, I built the relationships. And then because I had so much marketing knowledge in terms of social, IDX, PPC, all of that, I immediately, like, from 0 to 12 months, I did the prospecting, then I set up the lead gen. And then I now know how to build a business without ever cold calling anybody. I don't cold call anybody anymore unless it's a lead I know or somebody comes in.
Right, but do your agents cold, like, do you so I might take a different perspective here, because I believe that there is opportunity in all lead sources. And I didn't have, 2011, 12, I didn't have, Cody will tell you I'm a salesperson, not a marketer, right? So, like,
I would say that
tracking.
Well, I would say the vast majority of agents out there probably. Yeah, I didn't. You might see this on your team. The vast majority of them aren't marketers like us. They don't understand.
No,
they don't understand.
And they don't have the time or energy and patience to learn that. Like they're very much so like, set me on the path. When I work with my clients, it's like, tell me exactly what to say, and I am the happiest puppy in the world. And I will not tear up your furniture. But if you leave me to my own devices to try to figure it out, I am just super stressed all day long, and I'm going to start digging holes all over the yard. And so like, I'm a big proponent of like, you don't have to call expireds your whole life, right? But as a new agent, like one of the way that I got out of production, like my last year, I was completely out of production for the most part. It was, $55 million or $49 million a year. I don't know what it ranged, somewhere around 50 mil. And for 7 months, 8 months of the year, I was in a different country traveling, doing the Tony Robbins Platinum program. But everybody who came into our world started by learning how to set their own appointments, right? So they had to take our age leads because we were generating a lot of leads. We were generating open houses. We had a couple ISAs. We would go out on, they would get the lower price listings. I would still take the higher price listing appointments. Anytime I went into the field, if I didn't have a sidekick next to me taking notes, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, what am I doing on an appointment if I don't have a sidekick? Now, if everybody was on appointment, that's a great day. But if I didn't have a sidekick with me, and that's what we were laughed at, because it was like Vic and his entourage, Vic's out with his entourage, right? Because we were always field training, because that's what I learned in Cutco, is that if you can't book an appointment, you can't feed yourself. So in our team, the first thing that we did, we learned how to book appointments. Then those appointments would be taken by a senior agent, and you would get a portion of it, but you got to manage like what you were comfortable managing. And then you would book more appointments, and then you would take your own appointments with an agent on the back. So the split would flip. So like, let's say it was, 50-50 or 70-30 of what the commission was to the agent, then that would flip. And then the agent that was training would have the senior agent there, and it would be 70 to them and 30 to the other guy. So everybody was like, hey, I don't mind helping. And then they would go out on their own. And then when they got ready to start listing, it'd be the same thing. So they would start listing, that they would call expired, they would call FSBOs. We weren't really huge on FSBOs. Probably did a few FSBOs, I would imagine. But our big thing was like, we just crushed expired. And then we would nurture people. We had these big events like twice a year. Our big event was a Christmas party, and we'd have huge events for Christmas. And we nurtured our clientele though, but like we loved on them so much. And during the process, like we cared about their results. But in the beginning of our presentation, one of the things I always teach my agents after we get the commitment is, hey, can I share a selfish goal with you, Dan? Yeah, what's up, bro? If you get what you want, which is the home that you want, the price that you want, the terms that you want, right? And you're happy, and our team has always delivered 5-star service, right? Which is our goal that's our goal and our commitment to you. At the end of the transaction, right? Or right before we get to the closing table, because afterwards you get busy with life and moving, right? We always pre-framed why we asked prior, would you be willing to write us a review? Oh my God, absolutely. They're like, boom, first commitment. Second commitment was, now, if at any time you don't get a 5-star service or you feel like there's something wrong, will you reach out to somebody on our team, whether it be me?
Setting mutual agreements.
And they said yes. And I said, and then the last one, right? And this one's like probably the most selfish. Is it okay if I share with you? And they're like, yeah, of course, right? Because like we're a team now. And I was like, we would love to be able to continue to spend the marketing dollars on our client experiences, our team support and training. If you know of anybody that's looking, or you just talking about real estate, they don't have to be ready to buy even in the next 2 years. Would you just make an introduction so that we can give them the same education that we gave you in this meeting? And they're like, oh my God, because we just dropped a 45-minute buyer consult on them where we educated them on the entire process, multiple offers. Here's what happens when you waive an inspection. Here's what happens when you waive your financing. Like, we just shared with them everything that they went to 46 open houses and nobody talked to them about. They're like, oh my God, every one of our friends should know about you. I was like, yeah, even the ones have an agent, like, we don't mind doing this. And we got referrals and we got reviews, right? And if there was ever an issue, they would tell us so that it never blew up in our face. Like, some deals blew up, but I mean, that's just part of business. But that was like how we set up this, but we set it up right there in the beginning to have success. And then every appointment, it'd be like, hey, here's the guy you talk to, right? So if there was an ISA and they came into the office, they would meet the ISA. Hey, here's the guy. This is Jarrell. Justin's going to be the guy taking care of you. I'm the guy that you never want to talk to.
So I want to tie this back to a question really for both of you, because like you both have ran, like you're running a super large team, like a really good sized team. Like,
that's a big team.
This is like, not a lot of people can run a 16, 17, 20 person team.
I'd rather shoot myself.
Yeah. I run that now, and it's, some days are tough, but like, so as you're explaining kind of that process of like, this is what we do, I guarantee you that we can explain our processes and we can explain our systems, but the systems don't always go the way that we want them to go. Agents tend to not do the things that we want them to do.
Kick them. Kick them in the head.
Yeah. From a team lead perspective, how are you guys managing like CRM hygiene? So Dan, like, how are you guys managing CRM hygiene to make sure that the agents are tagging people properly in the CRM? They're following the scripts. Are you guys listening to calls? Like maybe speak to the team leads right now that are listening to this podcast, how they can get more and better performance out of their agents. Because it's one thing for you, Vic, to say, hey, I did this, 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 and this. It's like, yeah, sure, you did.
All my agents, but they're all trained.
Yeah, but not all the time. There is no way in hell that every agent on your team is going to perform at the level that you expect them to do 100% of the time. It's not going to happen. So the question is, how do we drive performance? How do you drive performance, Dan?
I have a unique situation. I have a business partner that's not in production. Mm-hmm. So he is doing the CRM audit on a weekly basis. He's listening to phone calls. What does that
look like? What does the CRM audit look like? Like, what does that mean? Because I think there are some agents that have zero clue. There's some team leads that don't do that. Like, I'm working with a team lead right now that I am helping them implement all of their systems. They have nothing. So like, what is a CRM audit?
CRM audit we do once a week. You could do it multiple times a week if you were really getting a ton of lead inflow. Like if you just wanted to like make sure no lead was untouched. But we do it once a week, and we typically do it at the end of the week, either Friday or Saturdays, because typically that's when people are showing houses. They're not in the office, that type of thing. So that CRM audit is simple as this. We go through every single agent's account. We check on what leads we have provided them. We check to make sure there's notes. We check to make sure they're tagged correctly.
Are you checking every lead?
We're checking every lead.
Damn.
Because in the given week, right, there's not a ton. There's 20, 30 leads a person, right? It's just a couple clicks.
Yeah, but bro, that's 400 leads a week you guys are generating.
Yeah, and we get to a point where that audit for experienced agents, once we know they're on the program, it goes down. We only have to do it once a month, right, or quarterly, right? So we do have an ISA that does a lot of the beginner agents audits. We jump on a monthly coaching call with every agent just once a month. We have a Wednesday call that we do with the team. That one-on-one is usually I'm getting an email from my business partner that literally says like, hey, this is what's going on in the CRM. This is how many dials it made. This is how many appointments they've set. Like, so even if he's not on the call, I'm getting the report card sent to me like 30 minutes prior to the one-on-one call. I jump into the one-on-one call. We basically engage on anything that needs to be corrected first. Then we go into anything that needs to be creative or any new strategy or techniques that we're going to do. And then I ask them, like, hey, is there any questions or anything we need to be set up on or any concerns? And so each and every month, that audit combined with the one-on-one coaching call, it has a system of checks and balances, but the biggest piece of the puzzle is when they fail at lead generation, right? And we correct it. or we have to put some sort of situation is they lose the coaching call.
Interesting.
I stop talking to them. They're off my calendar because my time is too valuable. You want my time? Then you got to do what you need to do in order to earn my time. And so that's what we've implemented over the last 6 months. Like I'll just delete it off the calendar and then they'll ask, hey, what's up with no coaching call? Look at your CRM. Where's the notes? Where's this? Why haven't you dialed in a week? Right? And so we've created this system that every time an agent messes up, we proactively try to help them and correct them and get them back on the path. But they know that the result is the loss of access to me.
Got it.
And the transactions that are happening, they still may have questions and things that happen that are transactional. But the one-on-one coaching call is now moved to anybody who is producing and anybody who's doing the actual production and activities, production activities, and things that are actually going to turn into quantifiable results. So, because what happens when you're running a team that 50% of the agents are part-time agents, you need to make sure that they're committing that time when they're not at their job to real estate.
Right.
And there was a lot of learning curve for that that first 6 months of the team was me failing at understanding that and making sure that I didn't want to micromanage them, but I needed to. So CRM audit, call tracking, listening to calls, making sure we can pivot.
So how do you listen to calls and how do you give them feedback on calls? Because I think that like it's become abundant and like clearly I had a conversation the other day with a team lead who has 15 agents and we send them transfers. And I said to the client the other day, because we went in and we listened to the calls together, I'm like, you gotta listen to your agents' calls and what they're saying, because like Kevin over here, like doesn't know like anything. Like he like I'm like, who is Kevin? Like, and he's like, yeah, he's a newer agent. I'm like, why is he taking calls?
Right.
Why is he taking your database calls? He needs to be setting appointments for himself.
Yeah.
So how do you?
What's the metric?
What are the metrics that you look for when you listen
transfer
to from a more experienced, to a better lead source or does everybody get new leads on your team right out the gate? So they start at one lead at a time until they pass my test.
So they come in, right? You give them a playbook, right? You give them some training. You walk them through some things. Then you start to feed in the aged leads or the leads that, another agent threw back into, hey, I'm done with this lead. I've called them 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. I'm just kind of, they're done with me.
Exhausted
I'm done with
leads.
them. Yeah. So then you the tired leads, exhausted leads, you start to feed them those leads.
It's kind of, oh, good.
Yeah. I'll
break it down.
Yeah. Break it down. When do they get how do they progress in your world?
So let's start from the best lead sources backwards. Okay. So I think that's the best way to look at it versus starting at the bottom and going up. The best lead source is like a Zillow Premier agent, come show me a house, right? There's only 3 agents out of 20 that get those leads.
So those let's break this down, because like I know there are team leads we work with that are converting 14% of Zillow leads. So like break this down in regards to like what you're looking for from Zillow. I want to go really deep with you because you're an analytics guy. And you're like, A, what are they saying? B, what are they converting? And C, what are you looking for in regards to conversion?
Like, so our market doesn't have a high lead volume. Like it's not Zillow Flex. There's not a ton of calls. So like if I buy, if I own 3 top zip code positions, that most likely is going to be between 5 and 10 calls a month, maybe a little bit more. 14, 15. If we get 10 inbound calls, I want 5 of those to be showings, 50% appointment set. Because you're going to have 5 time wasters asking about land or random things and stuff, stupid stuff. What it really breaks down to is we like 20 to 35% is kind of what really it pans out to in terms of Zillow inbound lead conversion. That's typically what we're at each and every month.
Wait, I just want to stop here because I want people to understand the conversion metric you're looking for. Because so many people are like, oh, I got tons of leads and 2% converted. Like, what are you saying? Because you're saying 25 to 35% going to the closing table
of
10 transfers.
I would say of the 5 we're meeting.
Yeah. Okay. So of the 50%,
how many are going to the closing table?
At least 1 or 2 minimum.
So that's
every time.
So that's
20%.
That's 10 to 20% of the total inbound for the month. So
yeah, and we Yeah, that's where we're at, and they may not close this month. They're going to close 6 months from now.
Right. It doesn't matter when they close.
It doesn't matter when they're closed, but you're
still a closed transaction.
You're still looking at a 10 to 20% conversion rate on the inbound calls that you're getting, where other agents are saying no, 2% is 2 to 3% is a Zillow. It's just not true.
It's not true.
The team leads I'm speaking with is just that are actually converting on.
I mean, we were closing minimum in the 20s. Now, granted, the markets were totally different, but we had, a lot of the shit kickers, the $47,000 land that you couldn't build a house on. It's landlocked with the swamp.
You're not going to close 80%.
No, we wanted to close 1 in 4. Yeah. My goal was 1 in 4, so right?
20%.
That was my goal. And
keep going. I'm trying to break it down for people to help them understand that they don't understand the metrics. And when they do,
they don't track the metrics either. That's the other challenge is they're not tracking their metrics. And so if you're an individual agent, right, and you want my tracker, it's a Google Doc, right? You want my tracker, reach out, right? Just put tracker and I'll drop a link in there. There's no registration. I'll just give you the link so you can use it for free. Because if you can track a modest number, if you track 50% of your time, oh my God, massive. That will give you so much insight to your own company.
So Zillow, there's 3 agents on your team that take Zillow calls. What's the next source?
Next source is live transfers.
Got it.
From ISA.
Your ISA in-house.
In-house ISA, and I have out-of-house ISA as well. I call it out-house ISA. So we have 2 ISAs. Yeah. We have 2 ISAs that set appointments, live transfer over to our team. That same number is probably there's probably 10 agents in that pool, about half the agents. And then of those live transfers, I would say maybe if it's re-engaging the old database, we have 4,000 leads there, we may be at a 25, we're showing houses to 25%, closing maybe 10 to 15% of those.
Still crazy.
It's decent enough. That's still a really good number.
It's still mind-boggling.
So if you have 100 live transfers in the year, you close 10 to 15 deals out of those from the age lead bucket. So it sounds like you're a happy camper if your team leads, if your team agents are converting between 10 to 15, 20% on the high. On the low, it's around 10. You're keeping them in the loop and the flow.
Average price point, just so I know. Average price point, so people here know.
$375.
Okay, so you're sitting average price point $375. You're sitting in the $300,000 to $600,000 market, which a lot of clients are sitting on.
It's a good market. Got it. Okay. It's a great market.
Got it.
Yep. And so how the number works down is I like to have 4 team closings a month, and me have 2 closings a month as a personal. That's kind of my goal in terms of being profitable. We're netting about 10K profit after all expenses, all lead generation, all TC, all of that. If I can make a minimum $10,000 a month, I want to get that up to about 25K a month netting. But what everybody needs to know about running a team is that from the very first day you start the team until about 24 months into it, it's like a startup, right?
It's so hard.
You're dumping money into things, and you're taking commission checks that you would typically pay yourself, and you're literally saying well, there's 15 grand.
Here's the admin.
Here's 10K.
The TC. Here's the leads.
You're building a business.
Oh, by the way, you have to have 16 different platforms to track and model and all this. Oh, by the way, it's not just 1 seat for the CRM. It's 11 more seats, and each seat's $50. You're like, wait, that's $600 a month. Oh, and by the way, if you want this tracker, it's $12 a seat. You're like, holy shit, I just spent $6,000 in technology fees. What the frick? Most teams aren't profitable.
Yeah. No, it's
most teams are doing less profit as a team than they were doing as a solo agent with an admin.
Walk us through, because there are a lot of teams right now that aren't profitable, and you have the numbers dialed in. A lot of teams that are really resting on the agent's production, and you've been transparent enough to say, hey, you're still doing a lot of production currently. What is your strategy? Because there's plenty of people that are in the same boat. What is your strategy in order to get from the 10 to the 25K in net profit? How are you going to do that?
So lowering the cost per lead, lowering the lead source cost is the first thing we're doing. The next thing is we in-housed a lot of the management because of my experience. I was outsourcing Facebook leads and other things to other people, which was causing me a management fee or an exuberant management fee across many platforms. And now I've been able to kind of hone that in and then train somebody like my business partner to then manage it and optimize it. So because I have a business partner that's, putting in time and sweat equity and not in production, like that is able to cut some of those costs. So better management in terms of lead generation costs monthly. The next thing is to getting me out of production means teaching more people know how the systems and to list properties quicker. So what I'm doing is I'm co-listing, like literally every listing I get, I just pick an agent on my team and say, you're coming with me, just like you were talking about earlier. And we're trying to teach them the systems so that they can start co-listing, because I co-list every listing with them, but I never want to be, like you said, you don't want to talk to me. Like the only time I ever step in is if there's a major problem or like they go on vacation, right? Like, hey, team leader here, just taking over. If there's any showings in the next couple of weeks, or we get an offer, you're going to communicate directly with me. But typically they've never met me.
Yeah.
And to be very honest, like that's what I've tried to convert the selling side to, is like, you're co-listing with me. We're handling the paperwork. We're handling the TC. I'm reviewing all your offers, but I am out of the deal. And that being out of the deal allows me to go out and laser focus my clientele.
They actually don't.
Because that's a mindset shift.
Well, they actually don't care. Like I can tell you from personal, and we were dealing with, Seattle, Bellevue. So our entry level was 800, 2018. Now that same property is 1.1. So we're dealing entry level, and I always just thought of myself as like McDonald's, right? Not for the quality of their food and product, but for the quality of their business acumen. And I'm like, well, when I go to McDonald's, I don't, I haven't been there for decades, but when I went into a fast food joint, let's call it In-N-Out, which is better, I didn't need to meet Mr. and Mrs. In-N-Out Burger. I knew that their systems were in place and that I was going to get the same consistency, whether I was in Las Vegas on the Strip after a night of drinking, or I was in, LA where they started. And when I started to remove myself, because I didn't come into this business like you, I didn't come into real estate to be a realtor. I came in to run a real estate company. And I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, I was with this big brokerage and I've never met the owner of the brokerage, nor has anybody else. And so why is it so important for me to be involved in everything? And so the more I started to remove myself, and, if somebody asks, oh, well, we saw, because a lot of our clients are Indian. Oh, we saw Mr. Vikram we want to talk to him. And I'm like, my team would be like, oh, absolutely. Like, what is it that you need to talk about? Oh, we just wanted to meet him. And what they found was when they asked the question, like, we just wanted to meet him, make sure he's a real dude. Like, oh, okay. Is there anything in particular you wanted to talk about? No, just shaking his hand. We're very personal. We want to shake the hand of the man. Right. And I was like, cool. Because they don't care about me. And because our systems, like, we were really dialed in back in the day. Like we were really dialed in, and because everybody cross-trained everybody, the people that were in production and the ISAs, right? And we had just a big bullpen that everybody called from. So because everybody was so close to each other, that proximity created a ton of collaboration, right? And that collaboration, like if I was running a virtual team now, I would have 3 nights a week where we all just jumped on Zoom and did like calls. And so if somebody wanted to listen to somebody calling, right, they could put in the chat, hey, can everybody mute? And the senior person unmutes and we all listen to one of his or her calls. Because what happens is everybody started to speak alike. And because we all spoke the same language, because I installed that into my first guy who was basically like my partner in crime 24/7, everybody had that same quality, and it very easily flushed the people we didn't want out, and it very easily drew the people we wanted in. And so I think one of the key components for a lot of teams or even agents is that it's not, you're not just throwing things against the wall for the sake of throwing things against the wall. We're doing things in a systematic way so that when we deliver our product, and our product is ourself, it's our ability to conversate.
Yeah.
When we deliver that to people, they have a better experience. And if they have that better experience, right, because they don't care about, like they didn't care about me.
Yeah.
They cared about the process that we followed.
Now, I wish we could go for hours and hours and hours here because like this is super exciting, and we do have to wrap up here. Now, Dan, if there was one piece of advice, and wrapping up here, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to a team lead from the losses or the lessons that you have had over the last couple of years of building your real estate team, what would you leave that team lead with in regards to a lesson that has forever shaped your business and your life? What would that lesson be?
You have to be a teacher. You're a professor of the business to create Mini-Mes of you. And so you recruit Mini-Mes. Doesn't matter if they're female, male, any gender, any sex, any nationality. If you're going to create a team, you're going to have an eclectic mix of people's personalities and education levels and, different drives and income needs. But if they don't share the same passion and the ecosystem and the DNA structure of what you are and what you're delivering to your clients, you can't make a rinse and repeatable system. And I look at the military, like we call ourselves the special ops of real estate. We're the operative team. It's because we have systems, we create good training and onboarding, and the result is we have to win. And that's how every military should be operating. And a real estate team should be modeled the same. That's what I learned. Like I learned in a sloppy team environment or a leader who just wanted all of the ego and all of the fame and didn't really care about anybody else on their team, that team did not want the general to succeed. At the end of the day, they just wanted a job and make money, but they really didn't care about the overall structure of the team. So we focused, and what I would tell any team leader is DNA, recruit for DNA, recruit and create systems so that DNA is always there, and create a bunch of Mini-Mes in terms of what you go out and say on a listing appointment. They know exactly how to emulate it for conversion. And that's the biggest difference. Don't just throw them to a coaching program or a training program from some other team leader that's 3,000 miles away, right? It's got to be you. It's got to be you and all of that time you put into it to creating that business. The best companies across the board, and I'm talking about huge companies. You look at painting companies, contracting companies, service providers, right? When there's a really good leader that takes the time to train each and every one and shares they see the passion that you have in the business, then they want to continually contribute to that team approach. And I think that's the difference between teams that fail and teams that are good.
Dan, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. If somebody want to reach out to you, they want to have a conversation, where's the best place we can direct them to have that conversation with you?
Instagram, Oregon Real Estate Expert. Very easy to find me.
The marketing guy, one call to action. I love it.
Yeah, that's it. Go to my Instagram, hit me up at the DMs, and we're here to help any way we can, and we appreciate the opportunity, guys.
Hey, Dan, want to say thank you. Leave you with this one last thing is one of the things that really shaped our agency as we were starting was a book by my good friend Cameron Harold called Vivid Vision. And it really is exactly that, about like really trying to unpack what you want the DNA of your company to look like, the language you want your not just your clients to use, but the language you want your staff, your employees, your agents to use. So highly recommend checking out that book, Vivid Vision by Cameron Harold. Dan, I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you for tuning into another episode of the RE Agent Podcast. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys.